Good, brother.
Yep.
All right. Yo, what's good, man? This is EC Child Podcast, which one and only host, Glory Boy, here with our special guest in the house,
Right.
Anthony Thompson.
hmm
It's good to meet you.
Hey, good to meet you, brother.
Yeah,
Happy,
how was your?
excited to be here.
Oh, most definitely, and I'm happy that we actually contacted each other
Exactly.
to make this happen,
Yeah.
which is the most important time of our year in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, man. It's a pivotal year. It's a good year.
Most
2025.
definitely. So, how you feeling today, though?
I feel blessed, man. God is love. I feel honored to be here, be on the campaign trail, spreading my vision,
Right.
my love for the city, and my plans to kind of transform it.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so actually with my podcast, before we even start this, y'all go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. But I like to start off getting to know a person first. Just a little icebreaker. So we're just going to start off with your background. So where you from originally?
Yeah. I'm a child of the city, Buffalo, New York. I was born and raised in Buffalo. I grew up in the east side of Buffalo. Anyone who knows the 14215 zip code, which is one of the most challenged and toughest parts of Buffalo.
Yeah.
I grew up there. Mom, I have 5 brothers, 2 sisters. So I'm one of 8, one of the youngest. And man, just through God's love, through faith, hard work, and perseverance, I've been able to make a little bit of success for myself. Started off, went to Hutch Tech for high school, which is a local school in Buffalo.
You know what's crazy, man? I went to Hashtag too.
What year?
I graduated 2018.
Okay,
yeah,
I was 09.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after high school, I went to a HBCU called Morgan State University in Baltimore. But my father had got sick at the time. We didn't really know, but we know he started to slow down. So I came back home to kind of help him out. But I didn't let that kind of challenge and adversity stop me. I wanted to continue to get my education. So I enrolled at Canisius College.
I went to Canisius too.
Okay.
You know what's crazy? We got a lot in common right now.
A lot in common, man.
Yeah, most definitely.
So enrolled at Canisius College. I was a double major, political science and criminal justice.
Amazing.
I did that. I became a community organizer right out of college doing education reform in Buffalo. At the time, the graduation rate was about 50% citywide. It was around 20% for people of color and about 10% for black males. I mean, so a lot of structural systemic issues going on, and I want to get active, get engaged. So did community organizing for a bit. And then when my father did pass from cancer, I decided to dedicate a part of my professional life to the Cancer Society, American Cancer Society. I did advocacy work for them for several years before going to Columbia University for my first master's. I studied negotiations and conflict resolution. At the time, I was thinking about I was going back for my first master's. I wanted to be a nonprofit leader, so I went to study nonprofit management. But I had a realization one day that I didn't want to learn how to keep a nonprofit business going. I wanted to learn how to resolve issues, how to negotiate issues, and bring peace and resolutions to my community. So I decided to enroll in that major at the university. Then when I graduated from Columbia University, it was about December 2019. So literally within a few weeks, we were now in a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic that killed millions of people across our nation and other millions around the globe. So moved back home because New York City, Columbia's in New York City, and it was ground zero. So we got up out of there and I went home, but I didn't let that stop me or stop my kind of movement for being a change agent. Came back home, and eventually I started to help run the vac site in the city of Buffalo that vaccinated over 200,000 people in the city, which brought like a lot of important, big crisis, health crisis, made people get better and safe. From there, I got a cold call one day I was working at the vac site, and a trailblazer, in our community and across the state. Her name is Crystal People Stokes. She gave me a cold call one day. I'm thinking it's a prank call. She's like, yo, I need you to come join my team. I heard good things about you. So she asked me to come join. And if you know Crystal Peoples, you know the state assembly. She's the majority leader of the New York State Assembly, and she's the first black and first woman to hold the position. She represents the 141st district of the state, and that's basically what we comprise of east side of Buffalo. So she's a champion, very kind of a big advocate, trailblazer in the community, and I got to be under her tutelage for a couple of years, being her comms director. And then after that, I decided that I was taking a big pay cut after spending all this money to get this Columbia degree and these Canisius degrees.
Right.
So I became a philanthropic consultant, helping out different nonprofits. I moved to LA where I helped this big campaign in California, Los Angeles, for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. It's the biggest archdiocese in the nation. I think over 207 parishes, and I helped them raise $550 million for their entire diocese. Then I went on to Caltech to help them raise money for their student initiatives, which is the MIT of California. They helped build the NASA program or the JPL. Then I finished off at some small Episcopal church in Portland, Oregon, helping them raise millions to rebuild their roof. Then I decided that I wanted to kind of still make sure that my foundational, knowledge and ability to impact change was solid. So I enrolled at Harvard University to study public policy and public administration. All those years of being in the public sector, of being a public advocate, of running different campaigns and being in politics,
Right.
always found myself coming back to Buffalo, coming back to home, because I wanted to be a part of the transformation and the resilience of the city.
Right, exactly. A city that made you.
Yeah, city that made
you who you are today. But take us back though. Take us back, because your resume is amazing, man. Like your resume is like you have been in so much, especially in public engagement, which is something that a lot of us citizens, we like to, allow that person that have actually worked with people, that have been closer to people, to represent us as the city of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to take us back to when you was a child. Okay. What did you always wanted to become? Because right now that you're running for mayor, was it always your vision to become a mayor, or did you want to become something else besides that?
I think my earliest memories is watching like my pops watch Fox News and just get super energetic and excited and scream at the TV, and I used to thinking in my head what is making this man so mad? And especially during the seven presidential races and elections, he was always just invested in politics, and I guess through that interest, I kind of just fell into what is civic discourse, what is it to mean to be a leader in the community, and how decisions are made. I come from a long line of people who are definitely activated in the political sphere in the city or in their homes or jobs. My family values have taught me a lot of different things about the value of equity, fairness, freedom, and how history repeats itself. So if you don't know your history, if you don't know your culture, if you don't know the barriers out there, you can very much be in a perpetual cycle of either just stagnation or possibly going down a bad slope. So staying engaged, being an active political participant in your community is ultimately the biggest way to impact change. So I say when I was a kid, I wanted to be like my mom. She's a nurse. So I wanted to be a doctor. And then I wanted to, of course, be a superhero. I mean, and
what kind of superhero?
I don't know, man. Power Rangers, I feel was big when I was a kid.
Right.
So it was like Dragon Ball Z. I can't name too many kids who didn't want to go Super Saiyan. But eventually I recognized that I think my biggest calling was to give back in some capacity, use my life skills and capability to make anywhere that I'm at better than what it is.
Right, most definitely. Yeah. And me personally, as a Buffalo resident, I can tell you that some people were not actually happy with the past administration.
Yeah.
A lot of people complained a lot about, the roads are not being fixed and all of that. But you actually coming to, take that seat, how will you be so different from them?
Yeah, so, we learn in Harvard, one of the first things we learn is that there's no such thing as a broken system, that everything is designed perfectly the way it is, and that it's built to, benefit some and oppose or, oppress others. So when you think about that, and then you also have to keep in mind that, sometimes in Buffalo, just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you're an effective one. I give a lot of grace and admiration to, hopefully my soon-to-be predecessors. But, I think that we just need more. The community needs more. Potholes at this point is not just about filling them. It's structural. It's systemic. The roads in Buffalo, I think that I found out recently that a lot of the roads underneath it, we have a lot of brick and old roads that's about 200 years old. And because of that infrastructure that was in place, we just paved over it, paved over a lot of railroads that were there 200 years ago.
Right.
That infrastructure is kind of like fickle. So when the roads freeze over the winter, it creates like a bad, recipe for disaster, for potholes and crumbling infrastructure. So I think as the next city executive that I have to be able to, really diagnose the issue. And that comes from strong analyzation skills and then synthesizing while working collectively with all of my state partners, whether it's the county, whether it's the state and federal government, regardless of who's in power, who's in office, to make sure that we're getting the resources needed to address our structural and systemic issues.
Yeah,
So
most
it's
definitely.
boring, but it's the things that you need to have, that nuanced understanding of how to actually impact systemic change in the city.
Yeah, most definitely. And speaking of potholes and all the other things, but you know what makes Buffalo's very unique is there's a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
A lot of small businesses that are creating like a lot of different jobs and so on. But like, how do you plan to support those small businesses and just minority business owners?
Yeah, man. I mean, small business and entrepreneurs, they're kind of like the backbone of our economy. Um, when you have a thriving small business and entrepreneurship sector, then the city overall does a really good job. But so we need to have a city government that is completely in support of that. I think a lot of times that previous administrations or previous political leaders around the city or county and state, they have a habit of wanting to go big, and they want to only focus on big entrepreneurships and big deals and big businesses. We got to find a way to incentivize small business owners as well to be a part of it, to have access to incentives and grants, really get them incorporated into our economy, because when that happens, our city succeeds.
Yeah, most definitely. Because I have a business
Oh
myself.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
right.
and that's why I asked. Because like, what can you do to help me?
Yeah,
Most definitely. Like,
So-
what can you do to help me?
yeah.
As
So
a, ci- as
Buffalo
resident.
being one of the most economically challenged cities in the country, economic opportunity is vastly important. So it's not just enough to say we're going to have grants and initiatives for entrepreneurs, because I think that sometimes a lot of our people are not there yet. So we have to do phase by phase approach where we're having, when I lived in Syracuse for a year, they had a small business administration or bureau where you could go as a, prospective entrepreneur. You can get pretty much from A to B navigation from inception to completion of a small business plan, and also asking for different resources to fund it. We got to make government more accessible, because when you make it accessible, you make it transparent and easy to navigate, you create an economy that's inclusive, that's collective, that you're able to collaborate with, and everybody's able to succeed. My biggest goal of being a city executive is to make sure that everybody has a fair shot at life. I think that me growing up in the area that I did and being able to succeed in life, I understand the value of a fair shot. I might have all these Harvard degrees and Columbia and all these, things, but in no way, shape, or form am I the smartest person in my friend group. I've never made the honor roll day in my life, and I had so many more talented friends than me growing up. They just happened to fall through the cracks, not because they lacked ambition, but because they lacked the opportunity to do it.
Right.
Like I said, I'm one of 8, so I got to live vicariously through my siblings. I'm one of the youngest, so I got to see them make mistakes. So I got to see them say, like, you know what, maybe I don't want to miss curfew. Maybe I don't want to raise my voice at my mom. That led to, like, get into a suplex.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people didn't make it because they didn't have the right support system, or, a brother to look out for them. And maybe they were like the first to be born, so they had like a lot of responsibility and undue burden. So it's, how can I make sure, regardless of who you are, what your name or last name is, your zip code, your race, or whatever, your gender, whatever demographic it is, that our city can ensure you a fair shot at success in life.
Yeah, we need that kind of leadership.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I mean, one way to have a successful, like you said, successful community is investing in everybody else. Making sure that everyone is heard and is well taken care of. So now let's talk about safety and policing, because there has been a lot of police issues. There's people that continue saying defund the police, do this, do that. There's people that's complaining that they're building a new training ground right there in west side of Buffalo for our Buffalo police officers who don't have a training ground in Buffalo. They usually go to the suburbs and do what they have to do. But in terms of like policing and safety, uh, in what ways will you address the concerns around just crime and public safety? Because we do need the police officers,
Oh yeah.
but on the other hand, there's people that complain that police are bad,
Mhm.
but like how can you, address those concerns?
So that's a really good question. It's a big question to answer. I'm going to try my best to do it. Um, so first, I think when we talk about things about just the current state of our country and our community, that we have just a polarizing view of everything. Either you have to be this or that. You got to be anti defund the police, or you got to be pro police, and there's no really room for nuance, right? And I think relative compared to other places, our city's police relatively relatively is doesn't really have many bad things about it. These are people who I know, who I grew up with, and I feel like the police force has definitely changed over past generations. And I see a lot more of people who look like me and are from my community being police officers. But I also understand, that with being a police, you get a lot of power of discretion. It's a lot of authority. It's actually one of the most powerful function of a municipality that they control is the emergency service, whether it's the fire department or police. So, we got to recognize that sometimes we just got to make sure that policing is done fairly, that, police have every resource possible to be successful at their job and to conduct it in a way that, our community feels safe and feel like they're a team of. Because I think when you create divisions, I think that when police are not really from the community, they don't understand the nuance.
Right.
I think more training is better for police. So whether it's like mental health or trauma response, whether we're incorporating just more kind of like nuance and community policing, those are all things that strengthen our community, strengthen our police force, and make sure incidents are mitigated.
Right.
So I value any person who decides to be a police because it's a really a thankless job. Like a cop never shows up for a happy moment. You know what I mean? Rarely. So the stress of the job, but also the responsibility, the burden that you have, but also the ability. So I understand both sides because I've been on. I mean, I got family members who are cops, and I got family members who have been, the burden of a cop's authority. So I get both, and I get the nuance. Is how that we can bring everybody to the table, so everybody feels seen, heard, and safe. So whenever there's an interaction with police, and whenever police is interacting with citizens, there's no palpitations, there's no anxiety, there's no fear of just the person. You can actually figure out and see what the situation is, and hopefully peacefully resolve it in a way that's safe.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I've had an argument with some of my friends and some other people who are defund the police. I understand that,
yeah,
I understand that because I have experienced police officers that mistreated me in some way, but it's like looking at everybody as bad. That not everybody is bad,
yeah.
At the end of the day, like you said, it's just bringing everybody to that table and
So
have that conversation.
yeah, tell me more about what you think. Do you think that what do you think about police in general in the city?
I think the way the world is evolving, I feel like we do need public safety at all costs. We do need public safety. As you can see nowadays, it's a lot of young kids, who are committing violent, like who are just being so violent, stealing cars and all the above, and they're not being held accountable because there's not enough police that's there to at least be in the position for them to see them and not commit that crime.
Yeah,
And I feel like with the police just being around, it's gonna help people just feel somehow safe. But we need just police officers who understand the community.
yeah.
We need police officers who's gonna be able to serve and protect,
Hmm.
the community. So that's my take. I
Yeah.
need those people who are gonna be honest to the community and take care of them.
Yeah, we have to be, I think, multifaceted and multi-dimensional when we're thinking about addressing crime. It's not just always punitive, right? Just making sure that cops are walking a beat and making sure we're arresting people. It's
Right.
also a city's responsibility to make sure there's economic opportunity so people don't have to steal. They have enough resources where they don't have to like risk their life to try to make a little bit of extra cash, right? To maintain or survive in their life. So making sure that education, our system, our school, our curriculum is educating our kids, our city's most valuable resource, to the best of our abilities to make sure that we're like, a leading city across the nation and the world of of educating our kids for what it means to be in the 21st century. We got to make sure that once these kids graduate from high school or college, there are job opportunities available so that our talent stays in the city. We got to make sure that we're promoting not just college or pipelines to jobs, but pipelines to entrepreneurship. And we got to work collectively with education. I know I get a lot of people who ask about mayor control of the school board, and I'm much more in favor of some accountability structures. I'm open to discussing what that is. I don't necessarily believe that the mayor should have accountability to the school board, but some type of accountability to it. I wouldn't mind, being open to the idea of an appointment of board members or superintendents, but also just what does it mean to educate a student in our city for the 21st century? Like, should we incorporate coding into the curriculum? Should we incorporate, entrepreneurship more classes? Should we extend the school day? Should we use the school as a community hub for not just kids, but also for adult learning, for resource sharing? We have one of the highest childhood poverties rates in the country. And I think a lot of kids, their only meal sometimes is coming from school lunch. And sometimes, if they're early enough, they might get breakfast. We got to expand school lunches to be on the weekends and through the summer. All those type of things that we're thinking about, public health, education, public safety, all those things together, whether indirectly or directly, impacts crime. So we're just not having to use police to use their authority to arrest folks and put people in the system.
Most definitely, most definitely. And also, just speaking of school and education, you already mentioned, it's, I think, over like 1 million students drop out each year in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah. And also, I want to ask you this, though. How do you plan to improve public school education? Because I know a lot of times with public school education, a lot of things has been going on. With Trump being in office, he mentioned that the Department of Education, he was gonna, I believe, stop it.
Yeah.
But like, how do you plan to improve public school educations and also preventing that number of students dropping out to reduce?
Yeah. So I'm a product of education, right? I've experienced virtually every subset and kind of education in this country, whether it's public schools, charter schools, going to an HBCU, a private religious institution, and 2 Ivies. So I personally can tell you that education is the finest way of changing your trajectory in life. I don't care what your demographics are, what's your race, your age, your zip code. It's the best way of, changing who you are for the better and having your world views be so diverse to apply it in everyday life. That said, like I said, when I first got out of college, education was in a bad state in the city of Buffalo for public schools, 50% graduation rate around. We got to find ways to keep kids engaged. We got to make sure that the curriculum matches the 21st century. And that means that, what do kids need to do or be competitive so when they leave school, they're entering the workforce competitively, not only just in their community, not only in their state or even in the country, but globally. They have to compete for jobs now where, internet is taking over. So, we got to make sure kids are technology sufficient. We got to make sure they're ready for different things like entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
I feel like sometimes the traditional education system, we prepare kids to have jobs, but not to make jobs. So exposure is one of the best ways to change people's minds. It brings in diversity of perspectives, lenses, and ultimately makes people have a vast amount of different choices to have the life and pursue the happiness that they want. So working in collaboration. So as the mayor, that looks like me working with the school board, right? Not controlling the school board, but working with our partners, working with parents, teachers, students, making sure that everyone feels heard and seen and at the table to really make an impact, because it really does take a village. My story of heart this is not my story. This is our story, my community story. Everywhere from the top up of God to my family, to my friends, supporters. I made a lot of mistakes, growing up. You don't raise up in the East Side without having some bit of turbulence. But it's only because of grace from God, grace from my family, grace from my support system that I've been able to succeed. And those challenges, it makes me even a better change agent because I understand it. I understand the pain of this city. I understand the challenges because I lived them. And I also have lived the hope and resilience. So, my biggest way of making sure that kids have access to all the resources they need, I think it's an investment well spent because when our kids do well, our city does well.
Yeah, most definitely. The
Yeah,
kids are the future.
absolutely, man.
You know, the youth are the future. I mean, also with me, my business and my brothers, we're actually partnering with the Buffalo Police Department with
Okay,
like other organizations as well. Actually, doing something for the youth. It's called Be Inspired.
that's
Be
amazing, man.
Inspired. So just youth empowerment event.
Uh huh.
And I like how you say, you know, the youth are the future. So let's talk about housing and development.
Okay.
Because you know, Buffalo, there's a lot of homes you know, that's that do not have any use, you know, just a land with the house that just nobody's living in and it's just there. And we need those to be taken care of as well, you know,
Yeah.
because the more we take care of like what looks bad in our city and clean up our streets, the better our streets. I mean, the better our city will be in terms of like development and just going forward.
Hmm.
So what are your plans also just for affordable housing and also just cleaning the streets and making sure that our streets are taken care of?
Yeah, that could be found pretty much in my stance on infrastructure, and it's all kind of related. So at this point, just having an analytical lens of the city of Buffalo and then diagnosing so you can synthesize resolutions for it. We got to keep in mind that Buffalo is one of the most affordable cities in the country, which is just code for saying we're broke, we're poor. And then being that we're like at one point the third poorest city in the country, it plays a part. So I think years of having a very low property tax with no progressive like raises kind of helped put the position that we're in now. Because a lot of people are struggling in this city. A lot of people are working class. A lot of people are blue collar workers in Buffalo. So a lot of people are unable to just pay their mortgage, let alone have to rebuild the roof or to pay for plumbing or to remove lead paint. We need to find ways to support homeowners so that they can do the possible repairs to keep their property up to standard and up to code. And particularly with our renters, people who own rental homes, we got to make sure that when they are collecting rent to bring renters in, that their house are up to the standard, it's up to code, so people are safe and people aren't getting exposed to lead poisoning. Um, you know, the infrastructure also extends to the roads. There's a whole host of things, but they're all interdependent. So if you can't talk about economic opportunity without talking about the roads, because people have to get to and from work safely without hitting road bumps and falling into ditches. And then to talk about childhood poverty, we can't talk about that unless we're talking about economic opportunity for the parents. So all of these things are connected. All of these things are intertwined. It's just that how do we make sure when we're pulling one lever, the other one pushes, and that we're addressing everything holistically, systemically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, I want to ask you because it's a lot of homeless people in Buffalo.
Mhm.
I know you went to live in California. You saw a lot of people that were homeless, but they're living in a climate that's different. They can sleep outside, and still be alive. We had this winter storm in Buffalo one time, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of homeless people that really suffered.
Yeah.
So just to speak for the homeless people that we have in Buffalo, New York, uh, what can you do for them?
Yeah, I think you can judge government's effectiveness based off how they treat the most vulnerable population. Um, I think having readiness and being prepared, like it's Buffalo. We know it's going to be cold every winter. You know what I mean? We know that it's going to possibly be a big snowstorm coming.
Right.
I think that working with our county, state, and even federal partners to make sure that we have enough emergency resources available and allotted and budgeted for is ultimately going to make not only our city finances more stable, but our streets and our people more safe. So a lot of this is about making sure that we're planning properly and we're doing the simple things efficiently. And and also recognize that, homelessness is also an intractable issue. It's very complex. It's not just about getting a person a home, because it might be a whole host of other issues that go into why that person might be experiencing that bit of a challenge. So making sure that we're working with our, public health officials, with our nonprofits, public sector, really building a coalition to address our issues in the city is the most effective and most sustainable way of transforming the city of Buffalo.
And I like that, especially because I have this guy. He was a homeless guy actually
Okay.
that I actually knew, and every time I speak to him, man, like he will always address that, like, man, what they gonna do for us?
Yeah.
And a lot of people do suffer from drug use. They suffer from drug use. You help them, but they don't want the help. They just want the funds to take care of their needs.
Mhm.
But I like how you answer that. And so let's talk
Thank
about
you.
equity and inclusion.
Okay.
You mentioned that earlier, equity and inclusion. But how will your administration support racial and economic equity?
Oh yeah, man. Listen, people have wrongly oversimplified what DEI means. DEI is not just a race, is not just an acronym to be specific towards one particular race or one particular set group. Diversity in any aspect, inclusivity in any aspect, and equity in any aspect, and I don't care what topic it is, it ultimately improves any environment. Diversity of ideas, of thoughts, and perspectives is going to make whatever you do better because the more information you have, the more lenses you have, ultimately, the better your intervention or change for a system is going to become. So DEI is definitely, or not even just DEI, but the principles of DEI is going to be integrated in every policy implementation, every initiative that I will hope to bring to the city to transform it. So, my biggest goal of being a mayor and how I will measure my success is how equitable are my policies that I'm implementing? How many people at the table do I have? How many people can say they feel seen and heard when making big choices, and even the small ones? You know, that's an important part of being a leader to make sure that everybody is represented, everybody is heard, and it's ultimately going to make Buffalo a stronger place.
Yeah, and also, when we're getting closer to the end, in terms of like as a person that I do follow news and so on, a lot of people are are mad at just the lack of transparency and accountability that
Mhm.
politicians uphold. Like a lot of politicians will say something today uh, and do different tomorrow and never be accountable for their action.
Yeah.
But like you yourself, how will you maintain transparency and accountability
Yeah.
as the mayor of Buffalo?
Yeah. So we got to keep in mind that, there are accountability structures in every elected office. We have the power of voting someone in and we have the power of voting someone out. I think the biggest way to kind of end that critique is to stay politically active and engaged. You have to be an active political participant in the community. You got to show up. You got to make sure your voice is heard and seen because a lot of times, like I was saying earlier, there's no such thing as a broken system. And I always say like Martin Luther King used to talk about this thing called the moral arc of justice, and that how it's long but it's bent towards justice. What that basically states is that when you're trying to change systems or systemic issues and structures, that whatever you do to intervene for it, that system is ultimately going to push back because it doesn't want to change. You have to constantly always be pushing for forwardness to make sure Buffalo ultimately gets better or whatever environment you're in gets better. So being courageous enough and bold enough to fail, to be wrong, but to continue to persevere for a better day and for to get to that promised land. So, my biggest jobs as accountability is that I'm I'm not going to assume that I'm the smartest person in every room. That I'm going to be okay and open with being wrong and hearing other people's perspectives because once again, diversity and equity and inclusion matters to me. I want to know what your perspective is. I want to know what went wrong in your experience in the city, but I also want to know what do you appreciate about Buffalo? What are some things that we can do to further enforce the positivity of things that are Buffalo doing well? So those kind of mechanisms, those feedback loops that a leader should be open to, those things are going to make city government more accessible, more easy, more transparent, because there'll always be a place to speak truth to power and to hold your elected officials accountable. and just make sure that and also a big thing is making sure that we have great customer service as a city. That our customer service could beat Chick-fil-A customer service every day of the week.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's the goal, man. So transparency, accountability, and openness to different ideas.
Most definitely. And last but not least, what message do you have for the residents of this wonderful city of Buffalo?
Yeah.
And also, like, what are you asking them or asking from them in order to have a successful campaign?
Vote. I can't vote. It is so. I know people sometimes have a misconception that their vote doesn't matter, and when we're talking about presidential races, which is very popular, people had a tendency. It's very abstract, but the more local you get, the more your vote matters, and every single vote at the municipal level it counts. This is a 5-person race, and any person can win this primary off of one vote. Is that serious? And the people, I mean, and a lot of the people who are established in politics, they want to keep that number low. They want to keep that turnout low because for them, they know what to expect. There's very limited variables. But when you engage and you become a part of the political system and you mobilize and you go to the polls, you make sure your voice is heard and not the small minority is making all decisions for our city. So please exercise your right to vote. Please get registered. Please get engaged. I'm not saying you need to vote for me, but you need to vote. And I would just always say be active. Like, once again, no matter who the next mayor of the city of Buffalo is, there's only one person in one role. If you really want to impact change in our community, if you really want things to change, whatever policy the mayor implements, it's only from the top down approach. Unless he has a strong, or that person has a strong grassroots levels that of empowered citizens who are active and engaged, only then can the system truly change, because then that change will be sustainable. So it's a long road in a lot of our city issues. It's not going to be addressed, or it's not going to be completely solved in a year or two. These are systemic and structural issues. So we have to be able to withstand, the slow, aching pain of change. And that's ultimately, as a student of the civil rights movement and all types of transformation movements, it takes time, it takes grace, and it takes the ability to constantly persevere and move forward. So pay attention, get engaged, make sure you vote. And I would love to have yours. So thank you so much for the opportunity, man, to talk.
Most definitely, most definitely. But yeah, guys, man, we're done here. Thank you so much for coming through.
Yeah, man, I
It was a
appreciate
pleasure
it.
having you here. Yeah, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. And like you said, go vote.
Yeah.
Make your best judgment. So yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, man, thank you for having me.